Hi, Steffi. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
You've had quite a career as an insurance journalist. How has the industry and Post in particular kept your attention for so many years?
Well, during my journalist training, we had a talk from the then editor of the Grocer magazine, and he came in and he talked to me about the importance of trade magazines and the fact that they support their industry and that they hold up a mirror to the sector. And that really grabbed my attention, first of all. So I knew I wanted to go into a trade publication. So as you say, with Post History, it was a lovely place to start out. I didn't know anything about insurance. And I've watched my peers move around from sector to sector, but insurance really has held my interest, and for two main reasons. Firstly, when I joined, former editor of Post, David Worsfold, gave us a talk about insurance, and he said, give me a news story and I'll give you the insurance angle. And he was exactly right. There's nothing that happens in the news that isn't somehow affecting insurance or being affected by insurance, because insurance is behind everything. So there's never a day that goes by that there isn't something interesting happening. And it is so varied. I love that we write about general insurance, because it means one day I can be writing about car insurance claims and the next day I'm looking at space and satellites. You know, there's something so varied. And the second thing is just the people. It is a people sector. And from day one, everyone has been so helpful and supportive. And I'm not an insurer. There are still days when I don't know a term within insurance, and people are happy to talk you through it and happy to tell you exactly what's happening. And that's really what sort of kept me going.
Wonderful. And how have you fared during COVID? What have been the challenges, would you say, as a journalist during this period?
Well, it's certainly been a busy year. For the first few months, there was just so much going on. There was so much news. It was really hard to sort of see the wood for the trees. We had already worked from home to an extent. Several of us did it sort of one day a week. So actually moving to working at home full time wasn't a problem. Effectively, if we have a phone and a computer, we can still work. So that was fine. Some of the people who were in shared houses did struggle a little bit. And it definitely was a challenge with the kids working from home. I've got two at home, so that home education was interesting. It was also interesting for us in fact that people weren't going to their offices, so we had to make a decision quite early on not to print some of our issues and really put our effort into making sure that the online content was doing what it should be. We've resumed that now, and we've had good feedback for it, but that was an interesting decision for us to step away from print for a little bit. I think in terms of the other challenges, it is just that human contact thing. Part of how we work and what we do is through those relationships. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have been in the industry for a long time, so I could keep that going. But I think certainly if people were starting to build new relationships, it would have been really, really tricky throughout COVID.
And apart from COVID, what's been the industry story of the year for you? And why?
I mean, COVID really has touched everything. So it's really tricky to sort of think of something that hasn't. I mean, if you look at the motor sector, that's been impacted, travel, the travel bans, business interruptions obviously been the biggest story of the year, but that was all prompted by COVID. But there are still other stories that have happened. I mean, certainly the year started off with Davis Group acquiring Kios. We had Aon announcing its plans to buy Willis Towers Watson, which was just before lockdown. And more recently, we had the Co-op market study deal. And then in people moves, we obviously saw Amanda Blanc come back to the market as a Viva CEO, which was a very big story. And Pat Reagan has recently left QBE. So there are other stories, but obviously COVID was the big one.
And I guess there aren't many industry starlets that you've not interviewed over the years. Who would you say is the most memorable and why?
Well, the most memorable ones were actually the toughest ones. So I probably can't name names there, the really challenging ones. But I'd say the most memorable and enjoyable was with Danny Cotton, who I spoke to just a few weeks before she became the first female London Fire Commissioner. And that was brilliant, because actually I was used to speaking to people within the sector, and to get an outsider's view on what insurance was doing, and especially the fire point of view, was really, really refreshing. She was also really, really interesting, and her life experiences in a sort of challenging sector, which was really male dominated. And the real plus side was obviously that I got to go on a fire engine.